With the time we have remaining, let me ask about this. Anti-doping has been a topic of, believe it or not, reading for me for quite some time.
Okay.
And I don't disbelieve the value in segregating between, people who use and don't, for example, in powerlifting, to the extent that they have federations that are tested and non-tested.
Mm-hmm.
But my basically overlying belief is that there is a central tension between the rights and due process of athletes and the effectiveness of anti-doping. They are in central tension, and there is a give either way, depending on which way you want to give it. So with that preamble, to what extent do you believe there is, what would be your sense of the prevalence of performance enhancing drug use in professional MMA?
It's not as high as people think. It's decent, but it's not as high as people think. A lot of people think everyone's on drugs. The reality of the matter is, and probably a few MMA coaches listening to this and laughing, a lot of, I'm going to say this in the best way I can. This does not apply to all fighters, but it does apply to a lot of fighters. Getting them to do uncomfortable shit is really hard. You're lucky if they show up to practice for the love of God. And there are champions that like they'll do a fight camp, and then as soon as the fight camp's over and they win their fight, they're just back to like recreational alcoholism for 3 months until you sign them to a new contract, and then it's 2 months of fight camp. Getting guys like that to like put needles into their body with like stuff in them, they're like in a regular schedule. Oh, fuck, man, you're already pulling that shit. And if you have a state sanctioned training program, Russia, China, Iran, they don't have a choice. Like you show up at 8 a.m., the doctor does this every Monday and Wednesday, and then you go and you do your stuff. In MMA training in the United States is all private, right? It's all individuals and corporate entities. And so a lot of people just don't do drugs for the same reason they don't get like enough protein per day or don't sleep at night because they're banging strippers or something. They're just not sufficiently conscientious to do it. And that sounds crazy, but like that's real life, like I know these people in real life. I can tell you they're not using drugs. So they're like, man, I don't know, man. Fuck that shit. And they're just like, that's all you'll get out of them. Like, yeah, I tried it. It kind of made me feel weird. So I stopped. You're like, okay, whatever. Are there people using? Yeah, hell yeah. Is there a huge distinct advantage in using? Yes. I will say you have to get quite exotic nowadays to beat the WADA protocol. And I think the UFC employs the WADA protocol. Maybe. Is that true to your knowledge?
I'm not exactly sure if Drug Free Sport International adheres to it. They're not a signatory to it, I don't believe.
Okay, right on. So, a UFC maybe is a question mark, but for example, for international wrestling, man, like it's tough to cheat with drugs. You got to get drugs that don't show up. You got to make sure the testing people don't show up at the wrong time. It's actually quite tough to cheat with drugs. I would say the vast majority, if not all, current Olympian American wrestlers are drug-free. I would bet a lot of money on that. MMA fighters, I would say it's probably maybe 30% of them at most use drugs, and the vast majority probably don't. Because again, the other thing is when you start using drugs, like steroids, for example, what are they giving you? Enhanced aggression. Most guys don't have a problem with enhanced aggression. Good God, they're just trying to stay out of jail between training. They're good on that front. The other thing is like the drugs can enhance your recovery. True, but the drugs pump you up to work so hard in the gym. You actually like double dip on that. Yeah, they help you recover, but you're also doing more damage in training. The drugs oftentimes make you so strong and so fast quickly that they leave you liable to get injured. And like injury is the ultimate death knell in MMA. Like you pull a bicep and I don't even know what you do after that. Hopefully the reconstructive surgery goes well. And then also drugs tend to increase your body weight substantially with anabolic steroids. So unless you have your diet really dialed in or use very specific drugs, again, they test for a bunch of them. So that gets difficult. You'll just drug yourself right out of your weight class in most cases. So are there people using drugs? Yeah, hell yeah. But there's lots of people not using drugs in pro MMA, I guess and it surprises people because I think, again, people assume that modern MMA training at the top 10 of the world level is everyone's just got sports scientists and Russian doctors and machines and stuff. That's not even remotely close. Some guys do. Some guys are all the way down to like, this guy just shows up for fight camp for 2 months and just knocks everyone out.
I will say I push back slightly on that, if
Please.
I may, which is my overall sense is you're probably correct that in order to do this, to take the drug in the appropriate kind of way on the appropriate schedule, this is a rigmarole that they just simply do not have time or energy invested in. I don't doubt that certainly as a limiting factor. What I would say is I've been covering combat sports for 15 plus years. I have absolutely seen over time people's physiques for individual fight camps have super abnormal changes, and then this kind of reverting back to the norm. So in other words, what I mean is, how many people are using currently is probably a distinct question from how many have ever used in their professional career at some point to gain a momentary advantage. When I say momentary, I mean 3 to 6 month kind of a thing, and then let their foot off the gas. I think that number is probably significantly higher.
Yeah.
That's my personal feeling.
I totally agree. I will say one caveat to that I can come up with is a lot of the reason why guys have physique transformations like this is absolutely because they just start using steroids. Another big reason is, and this, it might sound crazy to people, but nonetheless, this has been my experience, and I've talked to a lot of folks, and it's also their experience. A much larger fraction than is interesting for us culturally to admit as fighters and fans of fight sport. A very large fraction of fighters do not train when they're not in fight camp. And I just mean they just don't train. They don't eat properly. They don't get lots of physical activity. They don't roll. They don't spar. They don't lift weights. And some of the guys train sort of year-roundish, but they only lift weights. I know tons of dudes. They only lift weights during fight camp. Dude, if I get you to lift weights for 3 months versus not lifting, holy shit, you will literally see steroid-like gains. You never touch the stuff. So yeah, when guys do train all the time and they do lift weights all the time, and then 8 weeks into fight camp, you're like, why are you red colored and 15 pounds heavier with no extra fat? Yeah, those guys are on. And there's tons of dudes like that. So my contention is not even, I don't have the statistical data to say most guys aren't or are on steroids for MMA at the high level. What I can say is lots of them are and lots of them aren't, which is a very different statement than, for example, making a claim about professional bodybuilding. Like if I told you like, well, lots of pro bodybuilders in the IFBB are on steroids, but lots aren't, you would be like, you're an idiot. You'd be completely correct. Every single one of them is, to the last person, maybe minus one freak every 10 years. And people think that's how all professional sports work. Another example really quick is cycling. They did a statistical analysis back about 15 years ago, 20 now, where the 50-50 probability of this person is or isn't doping would be reached at rank 700 for the top world rankings in cycling. So you'd have to get to rank 700 in the world rankings to be like, there's a 50-50 chance this guy's using or not. Anyone north, like if you're ranked 650, you are more than 50% chance using. If you're ranked 100 plus, you're like 99% chance using. That's not the case with MMA. You probably agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
But people think like regular MMA fans, regular people, a lot of times they have this understanding that like, of course, everyone's on everything at the top level. That's true for some sports. It's not true for MMA.